It's movie season, everyone. We did it. We're making it slowly out of that pandemic era of no movies. And now that it's summertime, this is the big blockbuster season. And Snake Eyes, G.I. Joe Origins movie, is one of the first out of the next large string of movies that'll be dropping in theaters, aside from Black Widow, which did drop first. But if I'm being honest, I think that Snake Eyes, for me, is much more important than Black Widow is. Mainly because Black Widow, despite my excitement for the MCU, took place in the past. We all knew that. And so it didn't really add any sort of larger narrative to the MCU. It just kind of developed a character. It didn't really matter that much anymore because she's dead. Different review for a different time though. We're here to talk about Snake Eyes G.I. Joe Origins. And this has got a lot of different reviews online. I'm seeing a lot of polarizing, both negative and very positive reviews on it. And so I think the big question around right now is this movie worth going to see? I think we all see what's going on in Paramount's head right now. If this turns out successful, that they're probably going to turn this into a bigger kind of cinematic universe. And I want to start off right off the gate by saying that's not a bad thing. I think it's just generally overly complained about when companies try and turn things into cinematic universes. If it's something that you like and that it's done well, why wouldn't you want to get more of it and get it done well and expand the universe under which those characters and that story was made? Now, admittedly, this entire review is coming from somebody who has not seen or touched anything from G.I. Joe for about 10 years since the most recent movie dropped. Those who don't know the history of G.I. Joe, because it's been so long, basically in the earlier 2000s, around the original Transformers trilogy era, they dropped 2 G.I. Joe movies, and frankly, they both kind of sucked. So this is Paramount's first stab at trying to reboot that and refresh it in a modern era since that, I think it was the 2011, 2009, something like that. With that being said, there's been a lot of controversy surrounding the fact that Snake Eyes' existence is shrouded and interesting by the main fact that we don't know who he is. And I disagree. I think inherently the idea of an origin story for a character who is shrouded in mystery is not a bad idea if it's done properly. A lot of people complained when the Joker movie was announced, and we see that that turned out to be a pretty widely loved and fabulous movie. To be frank with you, the main interest and investment I have in this movie is the future of the possible intellectual properties that Paramount could be basically bringing together in collaboration. If you haven't heard, on the horizon, Paramount's next big budget movie is going to be an upcoming Transformers movie. And yeah, I know, another Transformers movie. Haha, jokes are funny. The point is, this one is actually looking to be pretty different. It's the first ever big blockbuster Transformers movie with a full $200 million budget that's not directed by Michael Bay. For those who don't even know what I'm trying to stab at here, in the comic books, there's a lot of G.I. Joe and Transformers crossovers. Yes, this is where my interest comes in lay here, because the matter of fact is I'm very emotionally invested with Transformers, if you couldn't tell, and the success of this G.I. Joe Origins movie is going to be very much indicative of where the future of that collaboration could go, assuming both franchises continue successfully. Yeah, Paramount needs their own cinematic universe, and heck, everyone and their mom's trying to create one, so if they can do this properly, why not try and bring 2 massive franchises and possibly other ones together? You guys know I like to end things on a positive note, so we're going to start off with the things that kind of irked me, because this movie was not perfect. First off, we jump into this movie with Snake Eyes as a child with his father. Basically, his father is assassinated and murdered in front of him, and his house is burnt down. Snake Eyes, the kid, runs away before the bad people catch him, and the rest of this movie is him spending his adult life trying to find his father's murderer so that he can kill him. It's basically a revenge story. His father went by Snake Eyes, presumably because he was from the G.I. Joe faction, spoiler, and immediately after his father was killed, we assume that from there, the son also took the name of Snake Eyes, who is our main character. And so this Snake Eyes persona that he has about him has apparently been what he's gone by since he was like a young child. That's a massive issue, because everyone in G.I. Joe doesn't know Snake Eyes. They don't know where he came from. They don't know his story or who he is or what he looks like. They just know that he's this pretty unstoppable silent ninja. And this really disqualifies that idea. If you're going by the title of Snake Eyes since a child, you don't think that literally anybody, especially the biggest anti-terrorist organization in the world, is going to be able to track down and find out, oh look, yeah, this kid has been going by the name Snake Eyes since he was freaking 4 years old. So I just think it would have been more smart if he had gone by a different name and then towards the end of the movie been given the name of Snake Eyes by somebody, or adopted the name somehow because of a death, or something. Which does unveil another issue that this movie has. So now we figured out that Snake Eyes has adopted this suit and this Snake Eyes persona after he was like 35, 40 years old. Once again, there's no way you can tell me that these massive organizations can't actually figure out who he is and where he came from and what he looks like when he only started going invisible when he was that old and that far along in his life. Yeah, I also got to mention that the original baddie who killed his father, he does this whole rolling dice thing to figure out the fate of somebody. That's pretty cheesy. They ended up utilizing it so that it felt less cheesy, but opening the movie and being like, okay, we're gonna roll on your life here and then throw the dice, and then if it's ones, then I kill you. Come on. Obviously, everyone's thinking about Two-Face and every other character who's really evil by deciding somebody's life or death situation by rolling dice or flipping a coin or something. Also, this is super random and it's nitpicking. It's not necessarily a massive docking point on the movie, but I have to say, there was this one point in the movie, it was halfway through the movie, I think, when Snake Eyes is flashing back on his father's death. And as he confronts his father's killer in this weird flashback, he jumps out of the bushes to try and kill the father's killer. And instead, the guy just shoots Snake Eyes and he falls down. And as he's falling down, you hear this eagle's cry. You hear the... It's so funny. Like, I had to suppress my laughter in the theater because it's so random. Like, why did you just throw an eagle's cry into this man falling to his death after being shot? This movie spends the entire, what I believe, 2/3 of it being a martial arts training movie, and it's very entertaining, quite frankly, and I'll be talking about that in a minute. But around that halfway mark into the movie, they take this random turn where it gets very fictional and kind of into a fantasy movie. Granted, G.I. Joe is a fictional story, so you got to remember that, but I think a lot of people have forgotten. It's been a decade since anything G.I. Joe's come out, and, you just got to remind people, give them hints that it's going to be fictional before dropping on them like a bunch of freaking massive snakes. What? So we're going to take a step back here and talk about some of the things I did like about it, because I have a couple of other issues that I have, but I want to mention some of the other spoilers kind of in chronological order before I delve into that. First off, the movie's good. I know that sounds really... but it's good. It's a good movie. I walked out of this enjoying myself. This very much felt like the modern reimagining of the G.I. Joe franchise that we've needed and for some of us wanted, I guess. And that's something special about this movie too, is it doesn't rely too strongly on its IP in order to sell itself. As a matter of fact, the titles of G.I. Joe and Cobra and those facility names, they don't even pop up until like the end of the movie, which is impressive. The fact that the company had that kind of restraint to not constantly be throwing in their IP titles and copyrights in order to remind people, hey, this is a big movie, this is G.I. Joe. I think that's fantastic. It's an origin story where a character spent most of his life not even involved with the facility that he's currently working for, being G.I. Joe. I think a lot of people are gonna be in my shoes, in my seat, watching this movie, probably having watched G.I. Joe 10 years ago, but not like super remembering what character's what. And that gives this movie a strong grip because it allows you to remember just enough to be like, hey, I recognize that guy. He's gonna be something in the future. I just don't remember what. While also not remembering quite enough to know what's gonna happen. So you kind of do wonder, okay, who is this character gonna become? Is he good or bad? So instead of feeling like, I don't know, a Cruella origin story where Cruella DeVille is gonna end up the dog skinning woman is Cruella DeVille, instead it's an origin story of people we don't quite remember. And so it's genuinely surprising when twists and turns happen. And then by the time it ends, everything's in order for us to look on the Wikipedia page and say, oh yeah, that character is bad in the comic. Oh, this character is good. And there was actually a massive twist in this movie I wasn't expecting. The writers of this movie actually had the gall and the guts to make Snake Eyes the bad guy in this movie. Now, by the end, yeah, he ends up making the right decision and turns sides, but I've seen a lot of people online in reviews complaining, oh, he just took so long to turn to the good side after he did all the damage. That's what made this so impressive to me, is the restraint of not having to tell this goody two-shoes story for a goody two-shoes character. It's Snake Eyes. He's a silent ninja. He obviously has some sort of super dirty past where he's done a lot of crap, and this is indicative of that, not to mention that his reason for being the bad guy makes sense. Now, granted, there is a point to which you say, okay, obviously the ends does not justify the means of trying to get your father and you're doing more bad than it's worth just to get a hold of him. But that's the point. The ends didn't justify the means, and he kept going. You see that he realizes it's wrong, but he keeps going because he so desperately wants to get a hold of his father's killer. And that's what I'm talking about, man. This is what we need. We need characters who aren't just polished in fine dining silver and gold that are just, I don't know what that phrase meant. The point is, I had a massive pet peeve with origin stories like Venom that just drive the character's narrative into the ground in order to make them look better for our audiences. Aside from that, the acting was great. There's a lot of good characters in this movie. As a matter of fact, I like just about every character, which is really rare for me to say. The blind master guy, I don't remember his name. He was pretty freaking cool, and towards the end he starts pulling out some moves. And here's something for you that you may not be expecting. They introduced one G.I. Joe character in this, one girl from the G.I. Joe faction. I don't remember her name because it's been way too long, but she's the redhead, you know, the redhead. I thought she was a great actress for the job. And frankly, as a general rule, I think Hollywood really sucks at making powerful women leads that aren't just the most hateable, rude people. I feel like Hollywood thinks that being a tough, awesome girl means that you have to be rude and sassy and condescending to everybody. I can't tell you why, but I really like this chick. I think she was a super good part of the movie, and I think the actress that they chose was likable. There's also a point in the movie that I really have to give props to, that in my mind, it actually solidified how much I like this movie. In a movie, whether it's fictional or it's real, whatever it is, I need the characters to make decisions that make sense. If the decisions they make don't click in my head, I get frustrated. It needs to feel like something we would do so that we can understand and relate to them. In that sense, there was a decision that was made in this movie that just hit the spot for me. That was awesome. It was when our main baddie, who I again don't remember the name of, holy crap, I should have done my research. On a dime, he basically has this powerful stone and he turns on the Baroness, who is like this Cobra leader lady, and they've been teamed up the whole time, so him turning on her is like this big twist. All the other G.I. Joe faction and other people are in the room here, and they look at her after the main baddie leaves, and they're like, wow, you're in an awkward spot. And then it was hilarious because they're like, you want to team up? And she's like, I guess. And they're like, okay, but this is done after this. I love that crap. That's so cool to me. You're gonna team up with somebody when all your interests align. It doesn't matter how much you hate each other. Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. Now that we've gotten to this end part of the movie, I need to talk about a couple other issues I had. Our big baddie has this stone that can just crush people. He'll like grip the stone, and then with his mind, he can destroy people at will. What didn't work is right after they established what this stone could do, and that it could do such powerful things on a dime and just boom, boom, kill people, he doesn't use it while fighting. He'll literally have entire martial arts fights with people while holding the stone in his left hand, and it's like, why? But let's talk about the biggest issue I have with this movie. We never get to see why Snake Eyes made a vow of silence. Listen, I'm gonna be frank here, okay? We all went into this movie with one question, because the only thing people really wonder about Snake Eyes is, why is he silent? What's the story behind that? So you watch this entire movie thinking that it's going to be this lead up to explaining why he doesn't talk, why he's mute, and why he doesn't speak, and we don't get to figure that out. And that really peeves me. That is literally the equivalent of having an entire Joker background origin story just to figure out why he becomes Joker, and then at the very end of it, he never puts on the makeup and he just walks outside with a big old smile, laughing and cackling. You know how peeved people would be? With that heat and steam off my shoulders and my chest, that's the only real thing weighing down on me from this movie. I had to pick it apart because it's fair for you guys to know the pros and cons of it. At the end of the day, let's ask the question, is this movie worth seeing? What did I think about it? I enjoyed this movie. It was a good movie. The Rotten Tomatoes score it currently has, I think, is sitting at 44%, is incredibly undeserving. I don't know what kind of bug crawled up somebody's neck, but this did not deserve half that bad score. If I was a critic and I was giving a straight Rotten Tomatoes percentage, I would call this at least a 70 to 75% movie. I say absolutely go watch this in theaters. If nothing else, if you don't give two rat's butts about G.I. Joe, go watch it, because it's a pretty dope martial arts movie about a soon-to-be basically superhero. Why not go watch that? This movie, in my eyes, was good enough to entrust a collaboration with my all-time favorite franchise. That's my thoughts for today, though. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please make sure to subscribe, because these reviews do take a lot of time and I enjoy doing it, but I also want to have a bigger community to share it with. Other than that, I'll see you in my next review or whatever I make later. So I'll see you soon. Later, guys.